The first time I realized my daughter might not be mine, she was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of orange juice. She was 4 years old. My wife had just finished telling me that our pediatrician wanted to run more tests because Lily's blood type didn't match what was listed in the hospital records. She said it casually, like she was talking about a billing mistake. Then Lily looked up at me with dark brown eyes neither my wife nor I had, and asked why I wasn't eating breakfast. I remember staring at her little face and thinking two things at once. First, that I loved her more than anything in the world. Second, that I suddenly didn't know who her father was. My wife, Claire, must have seen something change in my expression, because she immediately started talking faster. "The hospital makes mistakes all the time," she said. "They probably entered something wrong when she was born." I nodded. That was possible. Hospitals made mistakes. Records got mixed up. People clicked the wrong box on a screen. I worked as a fraud investigator for an insurance company in western Pennsylvania. My entire job was built around finding ordinary explanations before assuming someone was lying. A wrong blood type wasn't proof of anything. It was just a detail. The problem was that Claire had taught me to pay attention to details. We'd been married for 7 years, and living outside Pittsburgh in a 2-story house with a narrow backyard and a detached garage, I kept promising to clean. I was 36. Claire was 34. She worked as a physical therapist at a private rehabilitation clinic in Cranberry Township. She was organized, patient, and usually calm under pressure. The kind of person who remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders and kept spare phone chargers in her car. When we first met, I thought she was the most reliable person I'd ever known. That mattered to me. My father disappeared when I was 11, and my mother spent most of my childhood recovering from whatever crisis he'd left behind. I grew up believing stability was the most attractive quality a person could have. Claire felt stable. She didn't create drama. She didn't play games. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. At least, that's what I believed. Lily was born 3 years into our marriage. We had tried for nearly a year before Claire got pregnant. When she showed me the test, she was crying so hard she couldn't speak. I sat on the bathroom floor with her and laughed like an idiot. The pregnancy had been normal, except for one scare around 20 weeks, when Claire developed sharp pain in her side. Her doctor said it was nothing serious, but she spent 2 days in the hospital for observation. I stayed there with her the entire time. Or I thought I had. Looking back, that hospital stay became important for reasons I didn't understand yet. After Lily was born, I never questioned anything. She didn't look like me, but babies changed. She had dark hair. Claire's was light brown. Mine was almost blonde when I was a kid. She had brown eyes. Claire's were green. Mine were gray. People made comments, but not cruel ones. She must take after a grandparent. Those genes can hide for generations. Wait until she gets older. I laughed with them. Claire didn't. Whenever anyone mentioned Lily's appearance, Claire became tense. Not angry. Protective. At first I thought it was normal new mother behavior. Then Lily turned 3, and the comments continued. She had a small dimple in her left cheek that neither of us had. Her hair curled tightly near the ends. Her skin tanned easily in summer, while Claire and I burned after 20 minutes. Still, none of that proved anything. Families were complicated. Genetics were unpredictable. I told myself that for years. The blood type was the first thing I couldn't dismiss. Claire was type O positive. I was type O negative. According to the hospital record, Lily was listed as AB positive. I didn't remember enough biology from high school to understand what that meant, but I knew enough to feel uneasy. After Claire left for work, I opened my laptop. I searched blood type inheritance. The answer appeared immediately. 2 parents with type O blood could not have a child with type A B blood. I read it again. Then I looked for exceptions, rare mutations, testing errors, bone marrow transplants, anything. There were unusual medical conditions, but none applied to Lily. The simplest explanation was that the hospital record was wrong. The second simplest explanation was that one of her parents wasn't who we thought. I closed the laptop when I heard Lily coming down the stairs. She climbed into my lap, wearing pajamas covered in yellow stars. Can we watch the dinosaur show? Sure. She leaned against my chest. I held her while cartoon dinosaurs explained volcanoes. Nothing about the way I felt changed. That scared me. I had expected doubt to create distance. Instead, it made me hold her tighter. Claire came home around 6. She walked into the kitchen and saw my laptop still open on the counter. The blood type chart was on the screen. She stopped, only for a second. Then she took off her coat. You looked it up. I did. She placed her purse on a chair. I told you the hospital probably made a mistake. Then we should confirm it. Her eyes moved toward the living room where Lily was playing. Confirm what? Her blood type. Claire opened the refrigerator. She's already getting more tests. Not those tests. Her hand stayed on the refrigerator door. I didn't raise my voice. I want a paternity test. She turned around slowly. There are reactions people expect when they make an accusation like that. Shock, anger, disgust. Claire showed none of them. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you get after work. The kind you get when something you've been waiting for finally arrives. You don't trust me, she said. I trust facts. That's a convenient answer. It's an honest one. She closed the refrigerator. You've raised her for 4 years. I know. She calls you Dad. I know. And now a clerical error is enough for you to question everything? It's not just the blood type. That got her attention. I hadn't planned to say it. But once the words were out, I couldn't stop. The comments. What comments? How she doesn't look like either of us. Claire's face hardened. You're listening to other people now? I've been listening to you. She stared at me. Every time someone mentions it, you get defensive. Because people are rude. They're curious. They're implying I cheated. Did you? The room went quiet. Lily laughed at something on television. Claire looked past me toward the sound. Then she whispered, No. I wanted to believe her. The problem was that she answered too carefully. Not too slowly. Not too quickly. Carefully. Like she had chosen the exact words she could defend later. I stepped closer. Then take the test. She shook her head. No. Why? Because I'm not rewarding your paranoia. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She grabbed her purse and walked upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the bedroom door lock. She had never locked that door before. Not once. I stood in the kitchen looking at the blood type chart. Then her phone buzzed inside her purse. She had left it on the chair. The screen lit up. The message preview showed only one line. Did he finally ask? The sender's name was Dr. Adrian Cole. I knew that name. He was the obstetrician who had treated Claire during her pregnancy. And the man who had stayed alone with her during those 2 nights in the hospital while I believed she was sleeping. I didn't touch Claire's phone. Not because I suddenly respected her privacy, because I already had enough to think about. The screen went dark after a few seconds, taking the message with it. Did he finally ask? It wasn't the words that bothered me. It was the timing. If Dr. Adrian Cole had sent that message an hour earlier or later, I probably would have convinced myself it was about medical paperwork. Instead, it arrived less than 5 minutes after I'd asked Claire for a paternity test. That wasn't coincidence. That was awareness. Claire stayed upstairs for nearly an hour. When she finally came down, she'd changed into sweatpants and acted like the conversation had never happened. She helped Lily with a puzzle on the living room floor. She laughed when Lily insisted a giraffe belonged in the ocean. She even asked what I wanted for dinner. I watched her move around the house and wondered how many versions of my wife existed. The one playing with our daughter looked exactly like the woman I'd married. The one upstairs, locking doors and refusing a DNA test, felt like someone else entirely. After Lily went to bed, Claire poured herself a glass of wine. "We're not talking about this again tonight," she said before I even opened my mouth. I wasn't planning to. Good. I was planning to ask something else. She looked up. "When was the last time you talked to Dr. Cole?" She didn't answer immediately. "Last month." "About Lily?" "About some follow-up paperwork." 4 years later?" She shrugged. "Medical records take time." I almost smiled. I'd investigated insurance fraud for 12 years. Medical records didn't take 4 years unless someone wanted them to. "You've been texting him." "He checked in. Doctors usually don't." He was being nice. "After 4 years?" Claire set her wine glass down harder than she intended. "You are turning nothing into something." "I hope so." She folded her arms. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you. I'm asking questions." "You already made up your mind." "If I'd made up my mind, I wouldn't be asking." She stood. "I'm going to bed." "You locked the bedroom earlier." "I wanted space." "You've never needed space before." "I do now." She walked upstairs without another word. 10 seconds later, I heard the lock click again. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at preschool. She hugged me before running toward the playground. "Love you, Daddy." "I love you too." Those 4 words nearly broke me. Not because I doubted them. Because I didn't. No DNA result could erase 4 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, birthday parties, and Saturday mornings making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Whatever happened next, she was still my little girl. At work, I couldn't focus. 3 claim files sat open on my desk for almost an hour before my supervisor, Kevin, stopped beside my cubicle. "You sick?" "No." "You look awful." "Didn't sleep." He leaned against the partition. "Marriage stuff?" I looked at him. "Am I that obvious?" "I've been married 20 years, he smiled. "We all recognize that face." I almost told him. Instead, I just nodded. Around lunch, I did something I hadn't planned. I drove to the hospital where Lily had been born. The maternity wing had been renovated since then, but the records department was still in the same building. A woman named Denise greeted me through the reception window. "Can I help you?" "I need copies of my daughter's birth records." She asked for identification. A few minutes later, she returned carrying a folder. Everything looked normal. Birth certificate, delivery notes, lab reports. Then one page caught my attention. A nursing log from Claire's second night in observation before delivery. According to the chart, she'd been transferred to another room for additional monitoring between 9:40 p.m. and 11:15 p.m. I frowned. I remembered that night clearly, or at least I thought I did. Claire had told me to go home because the nurses said nothing was happening. I left around 9. She called just after 11 and said she'd been sleeping. The paperwork said otherwise. "Excuse me," I asked Denise. "Was this room change normal?" She looked over the page. "Happens sometimes." "Would the attending physician have been present?" "Usually." "Dr. Adrian Cole?" She checked the initials. "Looks that way." I thanked her and walked back to my truck. The timeline bothered me. Not because it proved anything. Because it contradicted Claire's memory. Or her story. Those weren't always the same thing. That evening I searched Dr. Adrian Cole online. Board certified, excellent reviews, married, 2 teenage sons. No disciplinary actions, no lawsuits, nothing unusual. His clinic website listed a direct office number. I stared at it for several minutes before calling. A receptionist answered. "Women's Health Associates. Hi. I was hoping to speak with Dr. Cole regarding my wife's old medical records." "Patient name?" "Claire Bennett." There was a short pause. "I'm sorry. Dr. Cole no longer practices here." That surprised me. "When did he leave?" "About 3 years ago." "Do you know where he went?" "I'm afraid we can't provide that information." She ended the call politely. 3 years. Long after Lily's birth? Long before today's text? So how were they still communicating? I opened Facebook. Nothing. LinkedIn. Nothing. No forwarding practice. No professional announcement. It was as if he'd disappeared. People don't disappear anymore. Not completely. Someone always leaves a trail. Claire got home around 6:30. She looked exhausted. "You went to the hospital." It wasn't a question. I looked up from the kitchen table. "How do you know?" "The records department called." That made me pause. "They called you?" "They said you requested copies." "Why would they do that?" "They thought I should know." That answer didn't sound right. Medical records departments didn't usually notify spouses because someone requested records they were legally entitled to receive. Unless someone had specifically asked them to. "You've spoken to them before?" Claire looked away. "No." "You expected me to go?" "I expected this." She pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "I've been waiting 4 years for this conversation." My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. Waiting. Not fearing. Waiting. "What conversation?" She looked toward the hallway to make sure Lily wasn't listening. Then she quietly said, "The one where you stop asking the wrong questions." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means—" She stopped herself. "No. If we're doing this—" She took a long breath. "When we're doing it with everything on the table." She reached into her purse, pulled out a sealed manila envelope, and slid it across the table toward me. "I've kept this since the day Lily was born." The envelope had never been opened. Across the front, in black marker, someone had written just 5 words. "Open only if he asks." I didn't touch the envelope right away. Claire kept both hands on the kitchen table. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She looked like someone who had spent years rehearsing a conversation she hoped would never happen. "What is this?" I asked. "I don't know exactly." "You've had it for 4 years." "Yes." "And you never opened it." "No." "Why?" She looked at the envelope for a long moment. "Because I was afraid that if I did, there would be no way back." That wasn't an answer. It was worse. I turned the envelope over. The flap had never been broken. There wasn't a return address, no clinic logo. Nothing except those 5 words written in thick black marker. "Open only if he asks." I looked back at Claire. "Who wrote this?" "I think Adrian did." "You think?" He handed it to me the morning we were discharged. My stomach tightened. The obstetrician gave you a sealed envelope and told you to keep it from your husband? She nodded. I asked what it was. And? He said, if you never question anything, I should throw it away after a few years. And if I did? He said I'd know when the time came. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Nothing about that sounded normal. Nothing. I picked up the envelope. Claire didn't try to stop me. Inside was a folded letter. One sheet of paper. No medical forms. No test results. Just a handwritten note. I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat and deliberate. Claire, if David ever starts asking questions about Lily's birth, don't try to answer them alone. Let him read the medical records first. He deserves facts before explanations. If he has opened this letter, then something happened that I hoped never would. Call me before you tell him anything else. Adrian. That was it. No explanation, no confession, no apology. Just instructions. I read it twice, then a third time. Finally, I placed the paper back on the table. That's all? Claire nodded. That's all. He expected this. Apparently. I leaned back in my chair. Why would he? I don't know. You've never asked? I wanted to. She rubbed her hands together. But every year that passed, it became harder. How often have you spoken to him? She hesitated. Twice. The message yesterday makes 3, she nodded. What were the other 2? The first was when Lily turned 1. The second was last Christmas. I stared at her. You stayed in contact with him for 4 years. It wasn't like that. There are a lot of things that apparently aren't like they look. Claire didn't argue. Instead, she quietly said, I've never had an affair. I looked at her. I know you don't believe me. I don't know what I believe. Then ask. I've been asking. No. She shook her head. You've been asking the wrong questions. I barely slept that night. Claire stayed in the guest room. Not because I asked. Because she chose to. Every few hours I woke up thinking about the letter. Not what it said. What it didn't say. If Adrian had fathered Lily. Why leave a letter instead of disappearing? If he'd made some terrible medical mistake, why hide it for 4 years? Neither explanation fit. The next morning I called in sick. At 9:30 my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. David? The voice was calm. Professional. Older than I remembered. Dr. Cole? Yes. You got Claire's message. I did. You've been expecting this. A long pause. I've been hoping it wouldn't happen. I think we need to meet. I agree. When? Today. He gave me the address of a small coffee shop about 40 minutes away. Not near the hospital. Not near my house. A place halfway between. Almost as if he'd planned it years ago, I arrived 20 minutes early. Old habits. When you spend your career interviewing people who lie for a living, you learn a lot by watching before anyone knows you're there. Dr. Adrian Cole arrived exactly on time. Gray sport coat. No tie. Older than I remembered, he looked like someone who hadn't slept much recently. He saw me through the window, ordered black coffee, and walked over. David? Doctor? Neither of us offered a handshake. He sat down. I assume you've read the letter. I have. And it raises more questions than it answers. I know. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. I wrote it that way intentionally. Why? Because I hoped you'd never need the rest. I stared at him. My wife has been texting you. Yes. Why? Because she was afraid this day would come. Did you tell her not to tell me? No. Did you tell her to hide something? No. Then tell me what you're hiding. He looked directly into my eyes. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible. I've had a strange week. It started the night Lily was born. I frowned. Not before? No. Not during Claire's pregnancy? No. Then what happened? He looked down for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. It was quieter. David, the little girl you brought home from the hospital, he stopped. Started again. May not be the same baby your wife delivered. I felt every sound in the coffee shop disappear. People were talking around us. Espresso machines hissed. A barista called someone's name. None of it reached me. I leaned forward. What did you just say? He didn't look away. I've spent 4 years trying to convince myself I was wrong. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Wrong about what? He reached into his leather briefcase, slowly, carefully. Then he placed an old hospital incident report on the table between us. Across the top, stamped in red, were 3 words I never expected to see. Infant identification error. I stared at the page. Then back at him. For the first time since all of this began, I realized the truth might be even bigger than betrayal. I read the heading 3 times. Infant identification error. The paper was yellowed around the edges, like it had been copied years ago and stored in a filing cabinet. The report contained only a handful of details. Time: 2:17 a.m. Location: Neonatal Observation Unit. Incident: temporary identification discrepancy involving 2 female newborns. Status: resolved. I looked up. Resolved? Dr. Cole nodded slowly. That's what the official report says. The official report? There was another one. I felt my jaw tighten. So, there are 2 versions? Yes. And you've kept this hidden for 4 years. I wasn't allowed to discuss it. By who? The hospital's legal department. He folded his hands. You have to understand what happened that night. I'm trying. Lily wasn't taken because someone kidnapped her. I didn't say she was. There was a power failure. I frowned. What? The storm that night. I remembered it immediately. Heavy rain, strong wind. The hospital had switched to emergency generators for nearly 40 minutes. Claire had mentioned it after we came home, mostly because the lights flickered while she was in labor. The electronic infant tracking system failed, Dr. Cole continued. The bracelets? Yes. They switched to manual identification. He slid another page across the table. A timeline. At 2:08 a.m., the generators failed over. At 2:12, 2 newborn girls were taken from the nursery for routine observation after mild breathing irregularities. At 2:29, 1 nurse reported a missing identification bracelet. At 2:41, replacement bands were issued. My eyes stopped there. Replacement. Not recovered. Replaced? You never found the original bracelets? No. So how did anyone know which baby belonged to which mother? He didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow breath. That's exactly the problem. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. You guessed? No? You assumed? We verified every detail we could. What details? Weight. Length. Footprints. Medical notes. He paused. The babies were born 23 minutes apart. So? They weighed within 1 ounce of each other. I stared at him. They were almost identical. At birth? Yes. I leaned back. Everything suddenly felt unreal. So you're telling me? My daughter might actually belong to another family. I'm telling you, we were never able to prove she wasn't. That's not the same thing. No, it isn't. He rubbed his forehead. I argued for DNA confirmation before discharge. What happened? The hospital administrator refused. Why? He believed the evidence was sufficient. And you didn't? No. Why not? He looked directly at me. Because I was the physician who examined both infants. And? I wasn't certain. I left the coffee shop with copies of every document Dr. Cole had brought. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my truck. Not because I believed everything, because for the first time, the facts fit together. Claire's fear, the sealed envelope, the strange text message. None of it pointed toward an affair. It pointed toward a secret no one wanted to admit existed. I started the engine, then shut it off again. One question still bothered me. I walked back inside. Dr. Cole was still sitting where I'd left him. One more thing. He nodded. You said there were 2 babies. Yes. What happened to the other family? His expression changed. They moved. Where? I don't know. The hospital never contacted them? I don't know. You've never tried to find them? His silence lasted long enough to answer. I tried. That surprised me. For how long? Almost a year. What happened? I was ordered to stop. Ordered by who? The hospital. Why? Because acknowledging uncertainty would expose them to catastrophic liability. I laughed bitterly. So everyone agreed to pretend? No. He shook his head. I didn't. What did you do? I documented everything. He reached into his briefcase one final time. This time he removed a flash drive. I made copies. Of what? Every internal email. Meeting notes. Security reports. The original investigation. He placed the flash drive on the table. I've kept it for 4 years. Why give it to me now? Because you're the only person who still has a reason to look. Claire was waiting in the driveway when I got home. She must have recognized my truck, because she walked outside before I even turned off the engine. You met him? I did. She looked at my face. I can tell. I held up the flash drive. Did you know? I knew there had been an incident. Did you know there was another baby? She nodded. My chest tightened. You knew. I knew there was a possibility. For 4 years. I begged them to do DNA testing. You never told me. I wasn't allowed. I stared at her. And you listened? She looked away. No, I signed papers saying I wouldn't discuss the investigation while they reviewed it. What investigation? It never happened. What? They closed it. 3 days later. As far as the hospital was concerned, everything matched. She laughed once. It sounded empty. I spent months wondering if every time Lily smiled at me, I was looking at someone else's child. The anger I'd been carrying all week suddenly shifted. It wasn't gone. It had just found a different target. Who signed those papers? The hospital attorney. And Dr. Cole? He refused. So that's why he kept the documents. She nodded. They pushed him out 6 months later. That explained why he disappeared from the practice. Not because of scandal. Because he'd become inconvenient. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, Claire and I sat at opposite ends of the living room. Neither of us turned on the television. Neither of us reached for our phones. Finally, I asked the question neither of us had wanted to say out loud. If there's even a chance? I looked toward the hallway where Lily's bedroom was. What do we do? Claire wiped away a tear. I don't know. I nodded slowly. For the first time since all of this started, I believed her. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. One text. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence. The hospital lied to both families. The other parents never stopped looking for answers. Underneath it was a name: Emma Carter, and an address less than 20 miles from our house. Someone else had been living with the same questions for 4 years. I didn't tell Claire about the text immediately. I read it 3 times before handing her my phone. She stared at the screen. Her face slowly lost color. "Emma Carter," she whispered. "You know the name?" She nodded. "Only from one conversation." "With who?" "Hospital administration." She sat down slowly on the porch steps. "The day before we were discharged, one of the nurses accidentally said another mother wouldn't stop asking questions." "What questions?" Why her baby didn't look like anyone in the family. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "She noticed too." Claire nodded. "They told me not to worry. They said every new parent imagines things after a difficult delivery." I looked at the address again. It was only 18 miles away. Whoever sent the message clearly wanted us to go there. The question was why. "I think we should leave this alone." Claire surprised me by saying it first. "You've waited 4 years." "I know." "So why stop now?" She looked toward Lily's bedroom window. "Because finding out we've been raising someone else's child doesn't magically fix anything." I didn't answer. She continued. "If Lily isn't biologically ours, she's still our daughter." "I know." "And if another little girl has been living with another family all this time?" Her voice cracked. "What happens then?" I had no answer. There probably wasn't one. That night, neither of us slept. Around 6 in the morning, I made coffee, while Claire sat at the kitchen table, reading the hospital report again. "I keep looking for something I missed." "There isn't. There has to be." She pointed toward one paragraph. "Look. The report listed 2 newborn girls only as infant A and infant B. No names. No room numbers. Just medical measurements, weight, length, heart rate, nothing identifying. It's like they erased them." I looked closer. One detail stood out. Infant B had a small birthmark on the inside of her right ankle. I froze. Claire noticed. "What?" "Lily has one." Claire slowly looked up. "No. She does. We always assumed it was just a birthmark." I read the line again. Small oval pigmentation. Right ankle. Exactly where Lily's was. Claire covered her mouth. "What if—" She couldn't finish the sentence. By 10 that morning, we were driving toward the address. Neither of us spoke much. The neighborhood was older than ours. Brick ranch houses, large maple trees, children riding bikes despite the summer heat. The address belonged to a modest white house with blue shutters. A bicycle leaned against the garage. A pink chalk drawing covered most of the driveway. I parked across the street. Claire looked at me. "We don't even know who sent the message." "I know." "What if they don't know anything?" "Then we'll leave." "What if they do?" I looked toward the house. Then we finally stopped guessing. I knocked. A man in his early 40s answered. Tall, broad shoulders, work boots. He looked from me to Claire, then quietly asked, "David?" I nodded. "I'm Ryan Carter." He stepped aside immediately. "You should come in." He'd been expecting us. The realization made my pulse quicken. Inside, family photographs covered one wall. Birthday parties, camping trips, Christmas mornings. One picture stopped me cold. A little girl about Lily's age stood beside a Christmas tree. Dark blonde hair, gray eyes, my gray eyes. Claire reached for my arm. Neither of us said anything. Ryan noticed. "That's Emma." He followed our gaze. "Our daughter." The room suddenly felt very small. A woman walked in from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs. She stopped the second she saw us. Her eyes filled instantly. "You actually came!" Ryan gently took the mugs from her hands before they slipped. "This is my wife, Megan." Claire introduced herself quietly. Nobody shook hands. Nobody smiled. There wasn't any normal way to begin this conversation. Finally, Ryan spoke. "We've spent 4 years trying to convince ourselves we were imagining things." I looked at the photograph again. Emma looked familiar. Not because I'd seen her before. Because parts of her looked like the child photos my mother kept in old albums. The shape of her chin. The way one eyebrow naturally sat slightly higher than the other. Tiny things. The kind nobody notices until they're impossible to ignore. Megan disappeared into another room. When she returned, she carried a large storage box. She placed it on the coffee table. Inside were hospital documents, letters, emails, photographs, DNA testing brochures, every page carefully organized. Ryan looked embarrassed. "I know how this sounds." "No," I quietly replied. "I think I finally know exactly how it sounds." He opened a folder. "We requested DNA testing before Emma turned 1. They refused." Claire looked surprised. "They refused you too?" Ryan nodded. "They said there was no medical reason." "What reason did you give?" Megan answered. "Emma's blood type." Claire slowly closed her eyes. "No." Ryan slid a laboratory report across the table. "Emma's blood type. O negative. The same as mine." Claire looked at me. Neither of us needed to say it. Our daughter had the blood type we expected. The child we'd been raising didn't. Ryan leaned forward. "We hired a lawyer." "What happened?" "The hospital settled." My head snapped up. "Settled?" "They paid us. Under one condition." "What condition?" Megan answered. "We signed confidentiality agreements." Claire stared at her. "They paid you to stay quiet?" Ryan nodded once. "We thought maybe we really were grieving new parents, imagining things. So we accepted it." He looked toward the hallway. "But we never stopped wondering." I looked around the room. "Who sent me the message?" Ryan hesitated, then looked upstairs. A little girl slowly came down the staircase. She couldn't have been older than 4. She held a stuffed rabbit under one arm. She looked directly at me, then smiled. For a moment, it felt like I was looking at childhood pictures of myself. Ryan quietly said, "Emma sent it." I frowned. "She's 4. He almost smiled. "Not her." He looked toward the kitchen. "My sister." A woman stepped into the room. She looked vaguely familiar. Then I remembered. She'd been wearing scrubs, standing near the nursery windows the morning Lily was born. "I was the nurse on duty that night," she said. "I've been carrying this secret ever since." Then she placed one final folder on the table. Across the front was a hospital logo. Stamped in red letters were the words that changed everything once again. "Confidential settlement, do not disclose." The hospital hadn't just made a mistake. They had known exactly how serious it was. And they had spent 4 years making sure no one ever compared the 2 girls. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The nurse kept both hands on the folder, as if she wasn't quite ready to let it go. "My name is Karen," she finally said. "I worked in the maternity ward for almost 12 years." Claire stared at her. "Were you there when Lily was born?" Karen nodded. "I was the nurse who carried both girls into the observation room after the generator failed." Ryan slowly sank into the couch. "You've known this whole time." "I've known there was a possibility." "A possibility?" I asked. You watched it happen. Tears filled her eyes. I watched the system fail. She looked at each of us before continuing. The electronic tracking bracelet stopped transmitting when the emergency power switched over. We were supposed to verify every infant manually before replacing the bands. You didn't? I did. She swallowed. But another nurse found one baby already wrapped and moved before I completed the paperwork. Claire leaned forward, so nobody knew which bracelet belonged to which child. Karen slowly nodded. We thought we fixed it. You thought. She closed her eyes. We matched footprints, weights, delivery times, and physical notes. Ryan laughed bitterly. And still got it wrong. We weren't sure. The room became quiet again. Karen pushed the confidential folder toward me. I shouldn't even have this. Then why keep it? Because they destroyed the originals. That got everyone's attention. The hospital destroyed records? Not everything. She shook her head. They rewrote the investigation. Inside the folder were internal emails, legal correspondence, and settlement documents. One email, sent 2 days after the births, stood out immediately. Risk management recommendation. Do not authorize independent DNA testing unless medically necessary. Probability of litigation exceeds acceptable exposure. I read it twice, then handed it to Claire. She looked sick. They knew. Karen nodded. They knew there was uncertainty. Ryan turned another page. The settlement? He stopped reading. His wife took the paper from him. The agreement wasn't compensation for emotional distress. It was payment in exchange for confidentiality. The Carters had accepted it because they believed there was no proof. No proof meant no court case. No court case meant no answers. They paid us to move on, Megan whispered. Karen looked at me. I couldn't. 3 weeks later, 4 adults and 2 little girls walked into the same genetic testing laboratory. Nobody tried to explain the situation to the children. Lily thought she was getting her finger measured. Emma was more interested in the fish tank in the waiting room. Watching them play together felt surreal. They laughed at the same cartoons. Both loved strawberry juice. Both collected smooth rocks from playgrounds. If someone had told me they were cousins, I would have believed it. Nobody would have guessed what we feared. What? The technician collected cheek swabs from everyone. Myself, Claire, Ryan, Megan, Lily, Emma. The results will take about 10 days, she said. 10 days. It sounded impossible. After 4 years of uncertainty, our lives would change because of an email. Those 10 days were the longest of my life. Claire and I didn't argue anymore. There wasn't any energy left for blame. Instead, we talked. Really talked. About everything we'd avoided. She admitted she'd wanted to tell me dozens of times. Every birthday. Every doctor's appointment. Every time someone commented that Lily didn't resemble either of us. I was terrified. Of losing her? She nodded. Or finding out she wasn't mine. I reached across the table and took her hand. For whatever it's worth, I never stopped believing you. She squeezed my fingers. I know. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to be afraid with you. The call came on a Thursday morning. The laboratory wanted everyone present. Everyone. No results over the phone. No emails. No exceptions. That alone told me the answer wasn't simple. We met in a private conference room. The genetic counselor placed 2 sealed reports on the table. I know this has been a difficult process. Nobody answered. She opened the first report. Lily, she looked directly at Claire, is your biological daughter. Claire burst into tears. Not because the mystery was solved, because half of it wasn't. The counselor opened the second report. Lily is not biologically related to David. I closed my eyes. Then she reached for Emma's report. Emma is biologically related to David. Ryan slowly leaned back. Megan covered her mouth. The counselor continued carefully. Emma is not biologically related to Megan. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The room felt frozen. Claire looked toward Emma. Megan looked toward Lily. The impossible had become undeniable. The babies had been switched, not completely. Half switched. Each mother had gone home with the other family's daughter. The story became national news 6 months later. Not because of us. Because another nurse came forward after seeing the lawsuit. Then another. Internal emails surfaced. Security footage previously believed destroyed had been recovered from an archived backup. The hospital settled before trial. Neither family wanted years in court. Money wasn't the point anymore. The settlement established college funds for both girls, lifetime counseling if they wanted it, and an independent medical trust to cover any future expenses. The hospital issued a public apology. It didn't change anything. The question everyone asked was the same. Did you switch the girls back? The answer surprised most people. No. How could we? Lily had called Claire Mom since the day she learned to speak. Emma had fallen asleep on Ryan's shoulder every night of her life. DNA explained biology. It didn't erase memories. Instead, we built something nobody expected. The girls grew up knowing the truth. They spent weekends together, birthdays together, Christmas morning alternating between both houses. They called all four of us by the names that felt natural. Mom, Dad, Mom Claire, Dad Ryan. Nobody forced titles. The girls decided. Children are better at accepting complicated truths than adults. 3 years later, Lily asked me a question while we were fishing. Are you my real dad? She was old enough to understand DNA. Old enough to hear rumors at school. I put my fishing rod down. What do you think? She smiled. I think I have 2 dads. I laughed. That's probably true. But you're the one who taught me to ride my bike. Yeah. And you still make dinosaur pancakes. I do. She wrapped her arms around me. So you're my dad. There wasn't anything scientific about that answer. It didn't need to be. Sometimes people assume the biggest lie in a story is betrayal. Ours wasn't. The biggest lie was believing biology alone decides who your family is. Blood matters. Truth matters. Honesty matters. But love isn't measured in DNA reports. It's measured in every ordinary day. You choose to show up. When I tucked Lily into bed that night, nothing about her had changed. Not her laugh, not her smile, not the way she insisted the hallway lights stay on just a little. The only thing that changed was that the questions we'd carried for 4 years were finally gone. And for the first time since that morning in the kitchen, when a blood type made my whole world wobble, our family wasn't built on uncertainty anymore. It was built on the truth.